Good morning, everybody. Happy post-holiday. So yeah, it's another hot one. And they're saying storms are predicted tonight or tomorrow because when cold meets warm or hot, it produces energy. When positive and negative come together, literally and figuratively, it produces energy. Sometimes the positive and negative produces a baby, and sometimes the positive negative produces a new viral variant. And so this faux distinction between binary and non-binary, there's still elements of positive and negative in each, and opposites attract. So even though it may be on the outside, someone looks like a negative, and it could be testosterone, and someone's a positive, and it could be estrogen. What someone looks like on the outside, and even what they gravitate towards sexually, doesn't speak to what is going on internally hormonally. And so you still get positive and negative, because anytime you put together two opposites, okay, then you're going to get some kind of chemistry, and that's what the attraction is. Sexual attraction is chemistry. And so you could say that even those that have questionable proclivities and predilections, well, one of them is a positive, the other one's a negative, a heavy positive, and this is where you get also that unlawful types of practices that is so reviled in our current simulation. And so then you understand what matter and antimatter is, and then you hear about CERN, and CERN it's a something particle collider. And when you have two opposites colliding together, obviously it's going to create what you would see as far as the most extreme is some kind of like explosive type of energy, like a neutron bomb, atomic bomb. And we've seen that. I mean, I haven't, but back in 1940 something, when the end of the World War II, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, they've seen very positive forces and very negative forces come together. And you could just have like a positive force, which is life, which is the atoms that are in the air, and then you add an extreme negative, and that's what causes a major explosion. But also at the micro level, when you have a viral, like a virus, like a person who's positive for all the viruses, well, relative to what you think positive is, there's titer test positives, which means that you have more parts per million, and then there's just regular positive, you're alive. And then you add in a negative element, whatever it is. And if you hold more of the certain viral algorithms that could potentially make you positive, and you add in an antiviral, then that creates explosions, entropy, which is new viral babies, new variants. And so, it's interesting watching my Facebook newsfeed, and they're saying, oh yeah, the monkeypox is not supposed to be that transmissible like COVID, but it can't be ruled out. Well, that's a loophole. That's like saying, okay, well, we don't foresee or project that it's going to be out of control, but anything is possible. Well, of course anything is possible. Anytime you play with the elements and you play with virals and antivirals, you play with positive and negative forces, it's going to produce an energy, electricity. And so is CERN actually developing negative forces in the environment? I'm sure, yeah. I mean, when you watch Stranger Things, and they're telling you everything, if you understand it through the viral point of view, yeah, there's a certain amount of negative energy that's being produced by anything that is trying to develop new life. I mean, that's what Wi-Fi is. It's electricity. That's what salt is. It's electricity on some level. It creates energy, or converts energy. I don't say create, because energy can't be created or destroyed, but it converts energy. And so when someone had asked me, is the Wi-Fi causing people's blindness? No, actually Wi-Fi is energetic, and it can cause someone to feel stuff, which is why you have the electrosensitive stuff, electrosensitivity. But also too much energy can cannibalize a person, because that's more energy than the person's able to retain. And so that's why there must be a balance. That's why you see next to the smart meters, right next to it, if there is a bush right next to it, yeah, there's going to be brown because that's so much energy without too much of the dilution in between the source and then the receiver. And so you have to have a certain amount of distance, like foliage and whatever, so that way that energy isn't completely decimating. And that's no different, if you are not eating all the food in the food supply, you're at a deficit, and you are, right next to a electrical transformer, obviously you're not keeping up to the level of the energy being converted on a constant basis, and so you'll be cannibalized, and yeah, cancer, disease, and chronic illness. But if you are keeping up to the level of the Wi-Fi, the 5G, 6G, 7G, 8G, and dealing with all the viruses that are going to be coming through, there would be no question you would survive everything, but it will be energetic. And then you have to know the world that you live in, because those that are influenced by the viral energy, you don't know what lurks in the hearts of mankind. You don't know what's bubbling below the surface, and you don't want to trigger yourself into something if you know you're highly triggered, and then you also don't want to trigger other people in the presence of, because you don't know what people are capable of. And that's why it's dangerous right now to be out there in public gatherings, not only because of just some random person popping off, but also then you're mutating these viruses left and right, and you don't know who has taken an extreme amount of antivirals because they think it's protection, or how many therapies they've underwent that is antiviral, because anything that is producing a negative on a body that's a positive, they're producing viral babies, and then that's what gets projected out, and that's what then is the projection of another wave. And there'll be a summer wave, there'll be a fall wave and a winter wave, because people are out there, they're traveling. I've seen it. I mean, what can I say? Nothing, and people are hanging out together. I mean, not only Memorial Weekend, but July 4th weekend, anytime in between, because people don't want to see any changes in their world. They don't want to change the way they see things. They think that all the therapies are going to protect them, but I don't know what protection means, okay? Because you don't feel it doesn't mean something isn't happening under the surface. And that's the blind spot of humanity, is they trust somebody else to tell them what goes on, but at the last second. And then when their body is a positive, like cancer, and they're taking a negative, like chemotherapy, radiation, or any kind of aggressive oncological type of therapy, then they're producing another viral baby that's going to take root because the body's at a deficit. And then you hear about all the demons, right? What are demons? Anything that is looking to take over and will destroy you in the process. And so that's where the demonology comes from, is really it comes from people who are at a deficit trying to fight a war inside because some other entity is trying to take over. And that's no different than outside there in the community, where someone's at a deficit, financially or even emotionally, and they're glomming onto people looking to be fed, either financially or emotionally and spiritually. And so that's why the whole JJ meta mentality is supposed to fulfill you, emotionally, spiritually, and physically and financially, because then you'll be more strategic. You'll be releasing those demons that are causing all the different conflicting ideologies, and then you will see things for what they are, not for what you want them to be, or not what someone has put out there as a projection. And so when you think about the CERN and the matter and the antimatter, I did a whole acronym around IMAGE, which is electrical impulses, matter, acids, and gases. And matter, people don't really understand what matter is, but matter is just a bunch of it's like a conglomeration of just all the elements, and there's specific order to the elements. Sometimes it could be matter, could be a pen. Okay, this is matter. It could be a food. It could be any kind of object, animate or inanimate. And so when you have something that's matter and antimatter, it's not just out there in the universe and just staying in the universe. It's also with proteins. It's also with biodiversity. It's also with anything that is a positive and negative force. No matter how much you put so many words in between positive and negative, whether it's LGBTQ or straight or binary or non-binary, there are still positive and negative forces going on within the hormones that cause then the evolution, the sexual attraction. And so that's why there's been so much confusion, because we put labels on things without understanding the chemistry, what's going on at the micro level. It's not just the macro level and what you see is what you get. Not necessarily. There's stuff going on underneath, and that's why there's so much attraction, and that's why there's sexual attraction, and that's why opposites do attract, because there is a certain amount of positive, a certain amount of negative at the hormonal level that is causing the chemistry, the chemical reactions. And so that's with my husband. I mean, he's a super negative, not as a bad thing. He could be a super positive, but I'm just going to put this for hypothetical and for example purposes. But he has a lot of testosterone, a lot of estrogen, and he has pheromones, so he smells awesome. It's an attraction thing, okay? Opposites attract. Could there be a woman that had the same kind of pheromones? Absolutely. There are women that have a lot more testosterone that take on a lot of hormonal characteristics. That's why some women are attracted to some women, even though they may be visually a woman and they have woman parts, but they hold a lot of the testosterone, a lot of the negative energy. It's not a bad thing, but it's just understanding the chemistry behind stuff. And so that's why you see the things that you don't normally see, or what the people who are right-wing are questioning. And I'm sorry, but everything is science. Everything is chemistry, and everything is about biodiversity and how we have programmed our society. And so then you take antimatter and matter and you put it together, then that is entropy, and that also causes fertility. And so that's why it is, like, again, why it's a little bit dangerous to be out there, because of just, you don't know who people are, and you don't know what kind of variants that are mutating, and what that's going to look like, in the future, because things don't just happen right away. Sometimes it does if someone's at a deficit, and that was the last straw that broke the camel's back. But what happens is things do incubate over time, and when someone is at a deficit, it will then eventually trigger, and you won't know when that trigger is going to be and how explosive it's going to be, and when and at what point. It doesn't matter if you're in the middle of a great job or you're trying to plan for this. I mean, Mother Nature does not discriminate, and if you're not preempting Mother Nature, if you're not understanding Mother Nature, then it'll be up to her when things start happening. And so that's the whole intelligence of the JJ meta mentality, is that you preempt stuff so it doesn't surprise you later. Okay? And, I'll tell you, our world is so different than what we think it was and has been. And there's a lot of magic, I guess. There's a lot of understanding the elements, understanding how compartmentalized and divided we actually are, and then the layers and layers of the programming that even those who think they're woke, who are all anti-V and playing those politics, religion, and science games, you've been given those arguments. You've been given, they've designed any place, they've designed, the architects, they designed your arguments against anything, because that way you don't see the bigger picture. That it really isn't the fight between V and anti-V. It really isn't the fight between Democrat and Republican. There really isn't a fight even between the different witches out there that are practicing their alchemy. Okay? You all are playing the same game, but someone has developed a superficial difference. So that way, if you're not happy with this simulation, even though the other simulation is basically the same, there's different wording and different, wardrobe and different people. And so you think that you've just taken, you're doing something different. Just like no different, someone takes kratom and they're getting major aggressive reactions that they're not happy with. And so then they go and switch to another natural remedy, right? I've seen that in the kratom world, where they're like, okay, the person's finally off of kratom, they've kicked the addiction, and now they want to go into another natural remedy. And then you're just trading one addiction for all the chemical reactions for another. And that's what goes on in our society, is that if you don't like one chemical reaction, well, here's another one. And it's dressed up as something different, but it's the same thing. And that's the holistic and allopathic world. And so I really had to figure out how to talk about sexuality and asexuality, and then the positive and negative, and the antimatter and the matter, because that's really that's the root cause of all the sexual and asexual reproduction. What is asexual reproduction? It's lengthening telomeres. Yes, when you are exposed to a new viral variant, you're going to produce mucus. And I've been blowing out mucus this whole weekend because there's a lot of pollen, yes, that is housed with all different viral variants. And people around me were getting together, I mean, as far as my neighbors. And so they produce their own viral variant that's like a cloud. And then I breathe it in and I'm blowing my nose and you feel the mucus. And so that then causes then me to blow my nose and poop and eat. And then I'm lengthening my telomeres from doing that. Okay? And so there's that's the asexual reproduction, as well as the cancer, as well as the teratomas, as well as tumors, as well as fatty tumors. And see, the development of a tumor, the development of a teratoma, the development of cancer comes from a high amount of mucus that isn't being released from the body. And then it finds a place to camp out. And it's relatively safe from whatever things are trying to attack it. So it thinks. But then it first it's like a mucus ball, and then it turns into a fatty tumor, and then it turns into an actual tumor, and then someone feels it because it's coming to the surface of the skin because it's getting that big, and then it turns into a malignant tumor, and then people it's like cancer, okay, or they get it scooped out, or they take all these different laser surgeries and all that stuff. But sometimes someone can asexually reproduce a teratoma, which is another head that it already knows that there's a body attached that can use that. And that's what parasites do. They use whatever's there and then develop another intellect, another entity, and that's a teratoma with the teeth and the hair and the eyes. And that's what's scary for people. And that's probably also what surgeons pull out of people when they undergo surgery, when there is a mass detected. And so that's asexual reproduction. And that happens everywhere because people who get cancer at deficits and new entities are coming in and trying to take over. And so asexual reproduction is, yes, when the mucus turns into a form, into an actual being. That's how life is able to infinitely sacred geometry, infinitely reproduce at a macro level on a continuous basis. And that's where salt comes in. Salt is the balancing force. Salt is first a catalyst to kick out the viral entities, but it's also it helps keep your organs intact by salting in, where you're coating your body with the food supply. But it also can be a cure. It also will develop a little bit of equilibrium. That's why the ocean is such a place where people go to all the time that need, some kind of relaxation, because they have so much kinetic activity in their brain and in their body, and they're full of anxiety. So when they go and hang out in the ocean, or they do Epsom salt baths and all that, they feel relaxed when they're doing the saltwater relaxation. But when you're doing saltwater flushes, like internally, and you have a lot of negative energy, this is where people also have an issue because they have so much negative energy inside, and they're taking something that's going to purge stuff out. They're going to feel the energy. When you get to a point of being cured in equilibrium, you pushed out most of the energetic forces, but you're then curing yourself where you're not reproducing telomerically, lengthening your telomeres, and also you probably won't have a baby either. And so you don't want to be to that point where you're not evolving, because you must evolve in this society. And so asexual reproduction is also lengthening your telomeres, where you're taking on new viral variants, your body's reproducing and lengthening telomeres at the micro protein level, and then you're staying alive, and you're also blowing your nose, and you're pooping, and you're eating, you're not dieting. So sexual reproduction is when you are at a deficit, or when there's a new viral variant comes in, and yeah, you're at a deficit again. Because if you're not lengthening your telomeres, then what's the body to do? If it's not going to reproduce itself, which is lengthening your telomeres, then it needs to then drop a baby. And that's where the womb comes into play, and then a woman can get pregnant. And she can get pregnant if she's taking stuff in through this way, like swallowing instead of spitting. She can get pregnant doing down there on both ends. Now, I doubt that even, I don't know the whole anal thing, but I'm not going to go down that road because I don't know too much of the science if you can get pregnant anally. But I would imagine that if you're that fertile, and there's ways, and if there's a way for semen to break through the walls between the anus and the vagina, that could happen. I don't rule anything out at this point, especially if you can potentially be more fertile as you're taking in semen this way. And so the sexual reproduction is when you're not lengthening your telomeres, and the body senses a change and also destruction. in the body, and so then a baby develops, and then that baby is parasitic and is taking resources from you, which is why then the matter and the antimatter coming together can be destructive to both of the parents. And you see it out there. You see a lot of divorce rates. You see people have a lot of issues when they're creating babies. Not everybody stays together when they have a baby, because that baby has caused so much of the fireworks, and both parents haven't resolved their issues. And so sometimes people hang on by a string when they have children, and they're staying together because they have kids. And then when the kids end up leaving the house and doing their own thing, the parents have to figure out what kind of relationship do they really have together. Some stand the test of time and they're together forever until they die. Others just go to a different, to their own spaces in the world. And so then if you're not having a baby and you're not lengthening your own telomeres, then that's when cancer, disease, chronic illness, and autoimmune disorders, and teratomas, and tumors, and all that then come into play. And so there is even an order of operations when it comes to sexual reproduction. Okay? And so that is going to be that chapter about sexual and asexual reproduction, about antimatter and matter, and about CERN, and about all the viral variants and the antivirals, and all the different therapies that are anti whatever it is that has just developed in the population as far as the new virus. And then you'll see how the world is constructed, and why there's so much energy in the atmosphere, and why so many people are popping off and so many people are unpredictable, because there's so much brewing under the surface and you don't know what lurks in the heart of mankind. And so then you have to be that much more aware of the world that you live in, your surroundings, and maybe reconsider going to that concert or that summer festival, because it's at this point you're gambling. All right, bye.